Hello and welcome to Angie B Crafts. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of playing with my gel plate because I haven't used it for quite a while, so I thought I would have a play but work on something bright. So I've got my larger gel plate here, which is 8x10 I believe, and then I've got my little 5x7 one here, which I'm going to use to roll off on. And I've got a selection of inks and paints, and I've got others that I can reach for if necessary, but these are the ones that I'm going to start with. So the first colour that I'm going to put down is yellow, and this is a really thick paint, but I love it. This is from Sennelier, and it's Innovative Acrylic Abstract, and this colour is their cadmium yellow medium hue, and I love it. If I'm going for bright, this is what I would go for. It's just such a beautiful, bright, vibrant yellow. I'm just going to move some of these out of the way so I don't knock them over, and then we are going to just put down as many layers as we can. I'm going to roll off onto the side here, and we'll see what we come up with. Oops. So I'm just using a textured thick card that happens to be in my stock. You can see from this I don't do clean jelly plates, so there's lots of other colours come through there as well, and I like that. I like the excitement of not knowing what you're going to get. I'm going to work on building up this piece, but I might do pulls on other colours as well, on other sheets, as well. So I'm now going to pop on some of the orange. Okay, so pop that to the side there, and let's put some orange down. So I'm using this is the same brand, but the orange isn't quite as thick as the yellow. The yellow is just, the orange isn't quite the same level of thickness. It's still thick, but not quite as thick. So with the orange, I'm getting some colour down, but then I'm going to start adding some texture in with it. So straight away we're getting into the texture, because we've got texture on the first layer from whatever's underlying, and then we've got texture from this layer. And again, I'm just going to roll off on the small gel plate at the side of me. So for the texture, I've got a little container here that's just got a selection of bits and bobs, and I'm just going to be reaching over for that. So I'm going to start off, this is actually part of the packaging that I've got, and I'm just going to put little prints into this. Now it's a foam, so it's not going to give a really clear, you can see it's not picking up all of the shape, but it's just adding texture and interest, and that's what I want. So pop that to one side, and then I think I'm going to go with good old bubble wrap. Just pop it on, lift it off in a few places. Not particularly fussy about where it goes, I'm just looking for texture. So again, I'm using the hammered side. This is a smooth side, the other side has got texture to it, and I'm using the textured side. I'm really looking to get as much texture on here as I can, but I want it to be bright, which is different from my norm. Oh, we're still bright. So you can see where we've got the shapes from the foam on the side, you can see the little bubbles from the bubble wrap. So I'm now going to pop on, I'm actually going to do a layer of white. And this is just normal white acrylic, that's Pebeo Studio one. And I'm just putting this on just to keep it bright really. Because what I sometimes do if I want a rest layer is I put a darker layer, or I alternate between dark and light. And I want to keep this light. So we're going to keep it light by adding in white. Because once you put on a layer of dark, immediately the next layer is going to be darker because of the way the light goes onto it. So again, I'm going to want some texture on this layer. I think we'll use, this is actually a grouting tool that I picked up from the local DIY shop. and we're just going to add some texture on here, and I'm going to put some lines up at the top, and again pop them on at the side of me. There we go, and pop this piece on top, and let's see what we get with this pull. I do absolutely love the unexpected things that you can pull off. I was watching a video the other day about a lady pulling alcohol inks but doing it slightly differently to the way I've done it, so I think I'm going to have a play with that again. So now you start to see more interest coming on. So we're still keeping it bright, but we're getting more and more interest and depth, which is what I am after. Looking good. The next layer that I think I'm going to add some ink. I've got a few different types of ink here. I've got some Liquitex, I've got gold and deep turquoise, I've got some Daler-Rowney, I've got the scarlet, lemon yellow and magenta, and I've also picked up my Eyes Ink pigment in tomato, and I'm thinking the tomato is the way to go because we're going bright and breezy. So I'm just gonna splat it on. That's as high tech as I'm getting with this. It is not going to be anything too challenging. I am going to brayer it, but I'm not expecting brilliant coverage because it is liquid. So you can see you start to get these cells forming on the gel. It repels it, but that's fine. It's just another layer, and I want different textures. So I'm going to pop this back on top. Let's see where it goes. Right, so now we've got, look at that, it just adds more texture. I love the fact that you can just keep adding textures and layers. Right, I'm going to add another ink, another even. This one I'm going to go for is the yellow. I'm just going to give this a bit of a swizz. The Daler-Rowney ones tend to separate the pigment out a little bit in the inks. Oh, and apparently I had a bit of a blockage because you can see that lump there. I'll just get a little bit of glue roll and remove that lump. Don't really want that. Right, we'll try again. Okay, so again I'm going to brayer it. Remember, we've already had red on, so there will be some oranginess coming through, but we're just looking for the layers of colour, and I'm aiming for this to be probably the brightest I've ever done in relation to using my Gelpress. Oh, you got some lovely blobs of yellow coming here particularly. I don't know if you can see that terribly well on the camera, but there's some beautiful inkiness going on. I'm actually going to get a second sheet to clean some of that off so that I can go back to using the acrylics, because with the acrylics you're able to add the texture. When you're using the inks it's a more random approach. So I'm just going to clean this off with some fresh paper just so I can go back to acrylic so it's nice and dry, but then you get a lovely pull off that as well. So don't ever be afraid of going in to clean up what you've done. Okay, this time I'm going to go pink. Oh, if I can open this one. There we are. This one's nearly done. This is just a really cheap pink paint that I've got. It's Crawford and Black, which is from, if you're in the UK, from The Works. It's their own brand. I don't actually know what a comparison brand would be. As far as I know it's their own brand. I'm saying that, I can't say definitively it's their own brand, but it's the only place I've ever seen it, so I've always assumed it was their own brand. So let's add more texture this time. So here I have, what I really like this because it looks like little circles of woodiness and goodiness. So I thought this might be an interesting texture to put on, and we'll see what we end up with, because half the fun with this is just trial and error. Yeah, quite like that. I think we'll add some bubble wrap too. There we go. And then we'll pop this on top and see how it looks. And what you've got to bear in mind is that this is just about having fun. And if it all goes horribly wrong, you've just had a bit of fun playing. And I do really enjoy the idea of playing. Now I'm thinking for the next layer I might, I want to take some more of that pink off, but it's looking good. Let's use this one again. I'm liking how vibrant I'm getting this. This is so out of character for me. It's lovely. Oh yes, that's fab. I'm really liking this. One of the things I find when I'm doing gel printing is that I quite often like the runoff page just as much, if not more. Right, this layer I'm going to do just a little bit of white, but then I'm not putting it all over. But onto that white I am going to put some Liquitex ink. So this is turquoise, but I'm just putting it down, and then I'm going to move it just with this. Okay, so I'm just moving it around and getting the texture by moving the ink on the paint. So you can decide where you want it, and because I'm mixing it in with the paint, it's lifting some of it off. Oh, I'm liking that. So that's adding a completely different texture. It's just giving me an idea. It's made me feel like it was a little bit oceanic. Let's see how that's come up. Oh yes. Oh, I really like how that's come up. That's rather lush. Right, I'm going to try and clean it off on this one again. It's really, really nice to just try different combinations. So you saw on that one, it was the white with the turquoise, but it still remained quite bright because I have the white underneath it. Oh, looks fab on the second pull as well. Brilliant. You can see a lot more of the texture on the second pull. So for this one now, I'm thinking this could possibly be the final layer before I go away from the gel press. So I'm going to put some, if I think about where I'm doing this, so I print it that way, I want it in that corner. So I'm thinking I want to fill here a little bit. So I need it in this corner. And I'm also going to put a little bit in the middle. A bit more than that, there we go. And let's see if we can get some brightness up here and down here as well. But instead of using the turquoise, we will use the magenta. So your magenta, if you think about your colours, your magenta is your equivalent of your red in your primary colours. Your magenta, cyan and yellow are your three colours. Cyan even. Say the right words, Angela, it helps. Now bear in mind this is still going to have some of the blue on it because I didn't clean it, I just picked it up. Oh, I'm liking how that's looking. So your texture can really be given by the movement as well, and I think when you start adding the movement in, you start to get movement in your image as well. I'm going to intentionally then put some of these in other places just to add more texture throughout, and then that is going to go up there. That's the way we know we want it, and let's see what pulls off. So this is really just about having a play and showing how you can use inks and paints together on the same gel press without being fearful of it. Throw what you like at it and see what happens. Just make sure it's nothing corrosive, obviously, but you can throw inks, paints, alcohol inks, acrylic pens, so your Posca pens and stuff like that can go on as well. So I think that's looking really lush now. I'm really liking that one. Isn't lush a good word? I do like that word. Right, I'm going to come away from the gel press now. I'm going to pop that down for myself, and I am now going to look at using some of this gold to start highlighting certain areas. Now I'm not, I'm just checking my gold hasn't gone funny. No, it hasn't. I'm going to give it a bit more of a swizz. I'm not drying it off. I'm not worrying too much about where I'm putting this, but I'm just putting a few little dots like that, and then I'm going to add in the magic. Known as water. It's really high tech. A bit of water. That's all you need. And you can start getting some movement. If you feel like it's not moving, add some more water. So I haven't let this dry. Everything's still mixing together. We're still going to get some texture, but we're also going to get this, look at this fabulous dribbliness. But it's going to then, when it dries off, have the glimmer that the gold is producing, which is what I'm after. Oh, look at it running. That makes me happy. I do love seeing it run like that. Oh, I like that. Right, I'm going to dry this off with a heat tool and then I'll come back to you. Right, so I've managed to dry this off. Now I did take off, there's quite a lot of water on it, so I took quite a lot off, but you can still see the shimmer there of the gold ink that I used, this Liquitex acrylic ink, and it's just spread about. You can still see the richer areas where I put it on, but it's moved about a little bit. So the next thing I'm going to do is, without the gel press, I am going to start adding some stencils. So I've picked up just a selection of textured stencils. There's a couple here that are from Clarity, designed by Leonie Pujol. There's one here from Clever Prints, which is designed by Emma Blake. And then these two are from AALL and Create. So they're just ones that I thought might be useful to have for added texture. So I'm going to start off with this fabulous, it's called Circles Not Circles, this one, and it's one of my all-time favourite stencils. I absolutely love it. You can see from the colour of it, I've used it a lot. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply acrylic paint through it. So to do that, I need to put some acrylic paint out. So I'm going to use this lovely turquoise from Reeves, deep turquoise. I do like this colour. I'm going to use this little gel press as my palette, because then whatever's left on it can just be pulled off in a print. It's quite a nice way of working to actually use them as a palette as well as a press, because you can just make sure your paint gets reused because it's always going to be on. So I'm just going to do a few little bits of this, and I'm dabbing, not stroking across, because I don't want it to go underneath. So you can see there we're starting to get the lovely Circles Not Circles look. I'm going to do some more over here. This has got all sorts on it. It's got crackle glaze, it's got paint, it's got ink. You can see me and cleaning stencils don't really go together. Now there are some crafters and artists who like a clean workspace, and I admit I would like a clean workspace, but that requires me to clean it and therein lies the problem, because I'm not the best. I'd rather get on with the creating, so I kind of forget the cleaning, which can be problematic at times when you lose things. There's some more. Now we are using thick paint, and I am pushing it into the stencil, so we are getting a little bit of a rough edge. It's not a smooth edge, and plus my stencil, if you look at my stencil, it's actually got, I don't know if you can see that, it's got lots of little bits still attached from previous uses, so I'm not getting a really smooth edge, but that's fine with me because that's not what I'm after. I'm after something that's just adding texture, so I'm not going to worry about how smooth the edge is. And I'm just going to pop a little bit more of this on, and then move on to a different stencil and a different colour. There we go. Oh, I quite like those. This one up here looks almost like a little rose. I like it. Okay, for the next one I am going to use, I love this stencil. I love all of them. There's a series, I've got 4 of these. There's the 2 circle ones, and then the other ones are more rectangular. In fact, one of them is here. And I do love the whole series, but I think this one's possibly my favourite. Don't know why, I just like it. But I like the way you can add texture. So I'm going to go in and grab another sponge. Now these are just makeup sponges, really cheap ones, and I don't like them, I'll be honest with you. I really am not a fan. So once these are used, I'm not going to be getting them again. But the reason that I don't like them isn't that they don't put the paint on, it's just they tend to fall apart. I've just got some cheap ones. I think that's possibly the reason they're not working effectively, because they were cheap. Where do we want this? I'm just wanting to use one or other end, and I think I like that end because I want to get some lines on it and then some circles. Right. Oh, I just had a thought. That might be interesting to do, Angela. So again, I'm using the exact same technique. I'm not overly worried if we don't get perfect images. In fact, I don't anticipate getting perfect images, and that's fine. But what I am going to do, I'm going to keep that in place. This is why you should really do your planning beforehand. Open this one, put a bit of the yellow out. This is almost like trying to do something with a child and hold it still. You're trying to keep your stencil still. And I'm just going to fold my sponge. This is why I end up with mucky hands, because I do things like this. And then we're starting to get a little bit of mix of colour. So we can put the yellow alongside and over the top of the orange, and as it goes over the top we start to get some shading going on. So I don't want it over all of it, because obviously I still want that orange to exist. But let's add some further along. So remember that what I said at the beginning of this was it was going to be bright. So I'm trying to stick with that concept and keep it nice and bright. Oh yes, that looks rather good. I think we need some more over this side. I'm going to stick with the same pieces, but I'm going to start working from the other end. And what I might do this time is put the yellow at the top and the orange down the bottom. I think these stencils are really good fun. I think there's quite a few now that Leonie has done. And she's got dies that go with them as well. I don't think they cut out the shapes of the stencils, but they're of the same style. I don't own any of them though. Not yet anyway. Maybe one day. Right, so I'm just going to hold that a bit firmer to try and get a stronger line. And there. And there. Oh, I'm starting to like how this is looking. Excellent. So now I'm going to introduce some stamping. And the stamping I've just had a root, and I think these would be a good stamp. I'm not going to use the skull, but I like the butterfly and I quite like these two. This one looks nice when it's stamped out, but I don't think I want it on this piece, but I like this as a background piece. If I hold that up, you can see, let's get some paper to put behind it. You'd think I'd have a piece of paper, wouldn't you? So you can see there it's got some lovely writing on it, and then there's the butterfly and the splat. The skull I've used, but it's not my favourite, but I have used it a few times. So we'll start with this, and I am going to put it onto a block, but I'm not intending to use the whole thing. I'm going to be stamping off the page. Just pop you out of the way, little gel plate, if you don't mind. And then we've got a bit more space. I'm just going to try and flatten this down a bit. So this stamp, I don't think I've ever actually used it before, but I'm using it purely as a background stamp, so it doesn't matter whether we get a full image, a partial image, or anywhere in between. I suppose if it's not full, it's got to be partial, hasn't it? We don't want no image, obviously, but it's a bit nice. What I'm going to do is grab a piece of card, which I could do with paper. There we go, piece of paper. I'm going to pop it here because I don't want to print the whole thing. I just want to print part of it. This is quite a useful trick if you just want to print part of an image. And you can see I'm moving it around so it's upside down, back to front, doesn't matter. It is for background, texture, and I'm also doing second and third generation stamping with it because I'm not worried. So we're just getting little hints of it here and there now. I think I quite like some down here. Let's see if there's anything left on here. Not really. Right, this bit. Oh yeah, a little bit there. Right, that will do. So I used just a thin piece of paper there, because it was just to protect it. If you put too thick of a piece underneath and then you try and stamp, you're going to end up not getting as much as of the images you're trying to get. So be aware of that. Now for this one, I do have some oxides, Distress Oxides, and I think I'm going to stamp with them for this because I'm wanting it to still look a little bit paler. I don't want it to be as stark as the black, so let's do it with oxides. This is Barn Door, and I don't mind if I go over the top of what I've just put down. I'm just adding bits of colour, so you can probably barely even see that, but there is now a splat of red. And then when we add some water in a minute, it'll be more noticeable. I do quite like Barn Door. I think I prefer, to be honest, in the Distress ink rather than the Distress Oxide. There's certain colours that I just think the vibrancy is better in the ink rather than the oxide. But it wouldn't stop me from using it. I still like it. There we go. We're starting to get something built up here. So I'm really not sure what we're going to end up doing with this. It may well just be a piece that is a piece, it just exists. Or it may be that we add a focal image onto it. Really not decided. But I'm quite liking the way that's looking. I'm going to give this a clean off. I do tend to clean stamps if I've used Distress Oxide because it's got little bits in it and I don't want them to sit on the stamp and I don't want them to mix with my other ink pads. So I do tend to use it with a bit of water, like so. Clean it, sorry, with a bit of water. There we go. Right. Let's see which way that goes. It goes that way. Now I'm thinking this might be nice as a focal image, but maybe before we stamp it we could do with another piece that's going to sit somewhere. And I'm just looking over here and looking at this and the colours on it. I'm wondering if we just do this. We've got every layer we've used is on here, and then we're going to add a little bit of white over the top and get a piece of card to pull the image with. Let me just grab some. There we go. I've got a piece of card. I think it's the same card, I'm not too sure. I found a load, when I've sorted through my craft room, I found a load of different card, and some of it I don't know what GSM it is. I'm not sure where it's come from. It's just stuff that I've got in my stash. So I think I'm going to be using some at the minute where I'm going, I don't actually know what that one is. Right, let's see what we pull off here then. I'm hoping this is going to give us something that we can then stamp onto, cut out and have as a focal image. That's making the table have a right wobble, isn't it? Oh, I'm liking how that's looked. I'm going to give it a little bit longer and just see what we get, because we're getting a really nice sort of cracked look there. Oh yes, oh I like it. Fabulous. Right, pop you to one side. So we've got all this, I don't know if you can see there that it's actually got some cracking on it, just in this top corner, which I love. But this is all the different layers from doing this. So it's got every layer, but there was also some muck already existing on the plate, and that's come off as well. So where do we want that butterfly? Let's have a look. So it's quite big. It's not, I don't think it's going to do terribly well that way, but I want to get some of that blue in. So to have some of that blue, like so, I think that would stamp quite nicely like that. So that is what we shall do. I'm just looking for my big stamping block. Don't know where it is. Oh well, we'll use what we can find. We can find this, so we'll use this. So I am going to do this with the Versafine Clair, but I think what I might do is emboss it. So bear with me a second while I get my embossing powder. There we go. Just move that down. Got embossing powder, we've got our substrate, we have our stamp. And this stamp, again, it's not one that's necessarily got to be perfect, and that's fine by me. I prefer images that you don't have to be perfect with, and that's not because I'm rubbish at stamping. Sometimes it goes wrong for all of us, I don't deny that, but it's because I just prefer that worn look. So I'm turning this around so I can get my hand comfortable to do the stamp where I want it, because I want some of that blue in. So I'm going to stamp it across there. So I've got a little bit on each of the wings, and I'm just going to make sure I get lots and lots of pressure. Now this block isn't as flexible, it's thicker than the other ones that I use, but my big A4 one is around somewhere, and I think possibly with another stamp on it, but I don't know where I've put it. Okay, that looks, oh, that looks lovely. I'll pop a little bit of embossing powder on because it's just going to, again, make it stand out where it has actually come into contact. So this embossing powder is just clear embossing powder. It's got goodness knows how many bits of whatever in it. It's got all sorts in it. I'm just flicking it there because I want it to come away from some of the edges where it's decided to settle, but I also want to make sure they get all the black bits. Okay, that will do. So we're going to get some of the little shiny dots, but that's fine because we're going to cut this out. Right, heat gun. I shall heat this up, melt it, and then I will come back to you. So here we have the heat embossed image. You can see it's got that lovely heat embossed sheen. Right, so here is the cutout image, and that is going to sit somewhere on here. I'm thinking I quite like it down there. You could have it that way up. One of the things to bear in mind with your work is you can always turn it around. Obviously, unless it's on the front of a card and the card opens a certain way. But I tend not to work on card fronts for that very reason, because then I can choose which way around something's going to go. I quite like that on there. Now I know it looks a bit faded back, and that's fine at the minute because we have tricks that we can do to bring it to the fore. Right, I'm going to pop that on. I'm not going to do any more thinking about it. And I'm using my Cosmic Shimmer Glue, which is getting a bit close to having to be replaced. For now, it's okay, but I think I'm going to have to be looking at another glue very, very soon. I do quite like this one. Just put some in the middle there as well. But it's very, very fast drying, this one. So even doing something like this, it's a bit quick. It depends what you're wanting. Gel medium's a much slower drying type of glue. So it really does depend on what you're after. So I'm keeping that over the top of that blue circle stencil bit because I actually think that the blue with the blue looks nice. And then I am thinking that I need to get one of my Stabilo ALL pencils to give it a bit of a drop shadow. Right, if you haven't used a Stabilo ALL pencil, they're a really cool pencil because they will, as the name suggests, actually draw on pretty much anything. They draw on glass, they draw on plastics, they draw on paper, and they're water reactive. So if you put it on like this, and then come in with a brush. This has just been sitting in my water pot and it just reacts, and you just start to get a bit of a shadow. And I'm thinking with this I might go with the black because the brown's not quite, no, I want to go with the black. Put the brown away, we'll stick with the black because I want that shadow to show up. There we go, that's what I'm after. So we're still going to be bright, we've still got oranges and yellows and pinks in here, but this shadow is just going to bring our butterfly to the fore of the whole thing because it's going to look like it's raised above it. I do like a good old drop shadow. It's such a simple way to make things stand out and to actually show anyone who's looking at what you've made what the focal image actually is. Because sometimes it can get confusing. If you just do everything as if they're the same, it can become confusing for the person who's looking at your work as to what is the focal image. So you need to make sure that you've let them know what your intention is. And this is a really nice way of doing that. So as you can see, I'm not putting a lot on. It doesn't need a lot. Obviously the black is a much more intense pigment than the brown, which is why it's showing up more. And that's what I wanted. It still dries back quite greyish, but the brown just wasn't giving me enough. The blue would have been good, it's a navy blue, but that isn't in my pencil case at the moment, so I couldn't use it. I'm going to go in this from this side a bit because it's just not taking the shadow underneath there, and you want to make sure that the shadow is right in contact with your piece. If you leave a gap between your image and the shadow, it just looks wrong. Oh, got a little lump of something there, a little lump of acrylic that's decided it's going to fall off. That's fine, it all adds to it. I do really like doing this. I think this bit of it can be quite meditative. I was doing a live in a group yesterday, just before I started doing this project, actually filming this project, and I did some ATCs, which are artist trading cards, but I did them with a meditative perspective on them. So looking at putting positive emotions into your ATCs, which was quite nice. I think people quite enjoyed it from the feedback I got. So don't be surprised if you don't see something like that on here soon, because I quite like using creativity as a way of relaxing and switching off. And it's a way of dealing with emotions as well. I've done quite a few pieces that if I've been upset by something or someone, I'll go and create and put my energy into that, and it's a really nice release. Or if I'm feeling a bit out of kilter, I would quite often just get my Gelpress out. It really is my go-to. I feel calm when I'm doing this. I can make as much mess as I want, kind of thing. I do love my Gelpress. I think I'm just starting a Gelpress collection. I could actually start just having Gelpress as my artwork because I've got so many of them. So we're nearly done. Just back to that beginning bit. Want a little bit more here. So if you start to feel that it's not rubbing in, it probably just means you need a wee bit more water on it. So just get some water. And the good thing with this is because we've got acrylic paint, acrylic is a plastic. So because we're putting water on it, it's just going to quite happily take it because it is plastic. Right, so we now have a butterfly that is slightly elevated on the page because we've gone round it, which is starting to look good. Right, I'm thinking we need a sentiment, and I'm thinking we need to use this for the sentiment. So what sentiment should we use? Here is the sentiment that, well, the sentiment set that I've chosen. So this is another AALL and Create set. This one is designed by Tracy Evans, and I do love a lot of her stuff. I think she's brilliant. But this one has got do new things every day, which we can do, and there's nothing to stop you having more than one sentiment. We also have on here Imagine, which I think would look nice, possibly out of the paler there, and Believe in Yourself. These all seem pertinent to a butterfly. Right, let's use this again. Oh, I'll use my little one. There we go. So I'm not putting them all nice and neat because I want to choose what the background is. What I could have done is just say, right, I'm going to have them all on this piece, but I wanted that to be paler, I wanted that more in the orange and this more in the orange. So it's about deciding what you want from your paper. I'm going to emboss these as well, so I'll get my embossing powder ready. Oops. So it looks a bit wrong that I'm spreading the stamps out that much, doesn't it? But it works. It depends on how you're working. If it's just a plain piece of paper or there's no particular bits, then I would stamp these up in a straight line, very regimented, and leave it at that. But for this, I want it to be on specific bits. There we go. There's something very satisfying about stamping. You start off with nothing there, and then you pull it off, and it's brilliant. I love it. Now that one hasn't stamped very well, so I may re-stamp that one, but let's do them all with the embossing powder so we don't lose the ability to do that on the ones we do like. Okay, see, my crafting space shrinks as I work, so believe in yourself and imagine. I think they're very butterfly-y phrases, aren't they? Particularly the imagine. Imagine what you could be as a butterfly. What could you be? Well, you're probably imagining more as a caterpillar, aren't you? Right, I have somewhere my little ink pad, but it's disappeared somewhere. Well, never mind, we'll use this. So I'm just going to go around these edges just as a frame and see if I'm happy with it. Remember, you can always go back in and do the exact same thing as you did with this, with the drop shadow. Right, let's stick these on. And the last thing we need to do, well, it might not be the last thing, but we're getting there, but I want to cut it down to size and decide what it is that I'm going to do with it. Because I'm thinking it may well just end up as a page in my journal. I say just then as if it's a negative. It's not at all. I absolutely love the pages in my journals. Oh, I do like this. I think it looks lovely and bright. So let's get the cutter and cut it down. And much as I said this was going to be a bright piece, there are certain things that I am not capable of doing, and that is, one of those things is, I am not capable of not using black around the edges. So I found my Stays On ink pad, which, if you've watched me before, you'll know is my favourite one for going around the edges. And if you haven't, this is my favourite ink pad for going around the edges. It's great. It's great for several reasons, and you can see how tatty it is. It really is well used, and I've re-inked it several times now, and at the minute it feels quite juicy because I re-inked it last week. But yeah, I love the way that it holds in your hand, that it fits really snugly. These little slightly curves, you wouldn't think it made much of a difference, but for just keeping a firm grip it's quite nice. And then I have to do my lovely black around the edges, because that's just what I do on pieces. I just really enjoy it. I do sometimes use other colours, but I tend to revert to black because it centres the eye. It just draws you in to that central image, and plus it gives it a slightly grungy look, which for me is kind of my thing. So there we have an almost finished piece. I think what we do need is a little bit of gel pennery. I think that is almost done, almost. I'm going to get some yellow and some magenta gloss sprays, and I'm going to put a little piece of card over the top of my butterfly, because we don't want too much of it going on there. You can have little bits but not too much. We'll give these a shuggle, and I'm going to take the lids off, and I'm just going to get some splats. There's nothing like a bit of splatting. So that's the yellow, and then we have the pink. Now be careful when you're doing this, don't have anything within splat range that you're bothered about getting splattered, because I mean, my computer within the first week of having it had splats of ink spray, of gloss spray on it, and it has continued to increase in the amount of gloss spray. If ever it goes in for repair, I think they're going to look at me and say, how can you expect a computer to actually function with that amount of acrylic on top of it? But hey, I expect a lot from my products. I'm just thinking there's too much pink and not enough yellow, so I'm going to add in some more yellow. Oh, that's better. I like this because these are flexible, so you get a more gentle splatter. You can just do it like that and you tend to get lines, but I'm not aiming for that at the moment. Let's take this off and have a look. Oh yes, I think we're done. We'll call that one done. Thanks very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed this and that you like the final piece. If you've got any questions or queries, please just drop me a message or put a comment in the box. I do check all my comments and respond to them. If you would like me to do a particular type of art, just let me know and we can see if we can make it happen. Why not follow me on my other social medias as well? There's Angie B Crafts on Facebook and Angie Mary B on Instagram. And I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much for your time and for watching me. Bye.